Hello, hello, hello. Yes, and we even got some English people joining us. So this evening is going to be a little bit unusual because I'm going to do my best to make this digital platform work. So I do have a little bit of a presentation I want to share with you, and hopefully by the end you'll be better informed about what I do, what we have on offer, and hello London. Yes, and that's interesting. They keep coming in. I never noticed this the last time I was on here. So let me see. I'm going to share. Yes, I am. I'm going to share my screen. There we go. And we're going to have a look at this window. PowerPoint I put together today, and I'll keep an eye on the time. I'm going to walk us through. I'm leaving 15 minutes at the end, so we're here for an hour. At the end, there'll be 15 minutes for you to fire your questions. So as I'm going through, any questions come up, just tap them in here and I'll take the time at the end and I'll answer them for you best I can. So from stuck to free, the method changing trauma recovery forever. Now that's quite a bold statement, but I'm hoping that within the next 45 minutes or so, I will have done enough to assure you that that statement is genuinely possible. So you might be viewing this evening for yourself, but I'm really aiming more at engaging therapists, body workers, physical therapists, manual therapists, and psychotherapists, and all of the main gang, counselors, psychologists, you name it. And I gather that this evening there might even be a few neuroscientists on board this evening. So I look forward to your questions in the comments. Here we go. Poor physical and mental health. It isn't you. It isn't you because if we went back to the ancient Greeks, which is kind of interesting because the health service, the health system, the Western medical system that we have is built upon the ancient Greek position. And yet, if you're reading this slide here, this is Plato from a comment between Socrates. And Socrates said, let no one, however rich or noble or fair, persuade you to give him the cure without the charm. So what he was saying all the way back then was that you can't treat the physical body without bringing in the soul or the mind or the spirit of that human being. So even then, the ancient Greeks had the same problems that are facing us today. However, they didn't have big pharma, and that's another story. So shadows drive us. Plato said that if you were born a prisoner in a cave and all you had to do was look at that cave, the wall, any shadows that hit that wall, you would think they were real. And here we are with today's cave, and sadly, an awful lot of people sit in front of that propaganda machine and they wonder why on earth it is that they have the kinds of behaviors and the kind of lifestyle that's causing problems. So mind the gap in our evolution. Here I'm going to whiz you through how I see it. Now, bear in mind that I was born deaf, and if you know me, you know that is the case. But nowadays, I've just got myself a small hearing aid, and it's kind of fantastic. So here you are, and you undergo a significant emotional event. Now, that doesn't mean that you've been attacked, or it can be just something that's emotionally significant or relevant to you. And that has to be a first-time experience. I'll explain later. But this first-time emotional event creates an emotional memory image. It's stored in the mind's eye, and it's in a position where I call upstream. So it's not physically in the body, it's in the mind's eye. So it's in the self, but it's not physically located within. So then we have the downstream problems. Whenever we enter an environment or situation that is similar to the original experience, and that fires up the limbic, hypothalamus, pituitary adrenal axis, or the LHPA, fires survival responses, which then can lead to psychological, biological, physiological, neurological, behavioral impact. And that is going to tip the allostatic load. And if you take the time to have a read our latest paper, you can see here that we've gone from the micro, the individual having these emotional memory images, but then we go to the macro, we go to the state level. And then very quickly you can see how undiagnosed trauma genuinely is a ticking time bomb. This paper and all of the other papers are available online, peer-reviewed, and you can email us, I can send you the links. So the problem we all face, undiagnosed trauma, emotional memory images, they act as danger alerts and they're triggered by subtle reminders. Now, these reminders are outside of our conscious awareness, but goodness me, when they fire, boof, do they fire. The problem is we go to seek help, but we're living in a symptom-based model. So yes, we get medications, but it isn't addressing the root cause. And traditional approaches risk reinforcing the pattern over and over. Here's a list of my academic papers. And again, give us an email and we can get them back to you. Where's the long? Here is a little demo. Yes. So let's have a look at this. This was taken during a training a few years ago. What I like is just I want to show you how much information comes from one well-placed question.
Let's give him a word on all, coach.
Yeah, I'm all right, and that's it. So, what's preventing you at the moment? Now, isn't there a lot to work with here? Right? Hits that, breath moves, feet, everything. The world says boom. Yeah. So you're terrified then?
No, the financial.
Yeah. So you're terrified.
Yeah. It's just money.
It's just money. So the money side is for all the bits that have to be covered everything. The thought of letting go of the day job and reaching out for what you want is just too scary.
So if we look from a client's position, the client no longer has to open up. And as our theory holds, if you have an emotional memory image firing, you will not be able to open up about the problem because when it's present, it also fires a shield or a cover, if you would, so that the person is unable to access the memory. And that's when it gets really fun because you're going into therapy, you're going for help, but you actually do not have a hold of the problem because of amnesia. And this amnesic state keeps this locked out of consciousness. The only handle that you have is that little connection that you just made. So we're showing you how to connect with that handle. Milton Erickson said that when a client arrives, the problem sits between the therapist and the client in the ether. But the moment that a therapist takes hold of that handle, if you imagine it like a hot pan, the moment the therapist takes hold of the handle, then it leaves the client with nothing to hold. So then the client leaves with another diagnosis or another label, if you would, but they're still stuck with their problem. And so my work holds very dearly to where Milton was. And he said, any attempt at an explanation is a therapeutic mistake. So now we have a client who's able to come into a session, doesn't need to open any dark closets because it's outside of their conscious awareness, but it also leaves them in a true position of power. Because one of the challenges I always felt was that the power that's allocated to the therapist. So this approach gives the power back to the individual client, and it leaves the therapist not needing to have any power because we're engaging the client in that journey. So now I'm going to share a little bit more of the presentation so that you can get a little bit more insight. So number of case studies and applications, just for those who are interested. When a person appears and they have a chronic dis-ease, now that's not a disease, it's a dis-ease, an uneasiness with their life. And when you help them to resolve that dis-ease, you find that many problems seem to just vanish. So how can we help the masses? That was my question, because there's only one of me and there's so many of those. And Lisa said, why don't we make an app? And here we are. There's the solution, Mind Reset. And the Mind Reset app takes the split-second unlearning model and it connects it to eye tracking technology. Now, you can actually get this on your phone. There's a lot of coaches already been using this for a few years with their clients, and we've had over 80,000 downloads and counting. Now, I haven't actually done the maths on that, but I knew I'd have to get out of bed very early every morning and work very long hours if I was ever to try and get 80,000 clients in a lifetime. Probably wouldn't happen. So your invitation is to learn split-second unlearning in October. I learn to identify emotional memory images quickly, a step-by-step intervention process, and then to integrate it with your current practice, scale your practice digitally, helping more people in less time. And if you register in the next 48 hours, we have some extra bonuses. So how much? Brilliant question. £95 until August the 15th. And then it's going up to 3,200. The course, to be fair, is nearly full, but we still have a few spaces left. So now, can I go from there to stop sharing? And I'm back to you guys. So what originally, when the whole process came about, was because I was sitting watching clients and wondering how it is that I was getting fast results. That I was getting results that these people had a problem for 30, 40 years, and we were only having one, maybe two sessions, and it didn't make sense. Not to me. And originally, I'd tried sitting there as the therapist in my head, wondering, have I done the best I could? And quite often, I'd applied the techniques I've been taught and still wasn't getting the result. So instead of blaming the client, I blame myself. So I forced myself to get better. And I think that's the challenge here, is that I'm reaching out to those of you who want to get better at communicating, want to get better at understanding how is it that we can help an individual without needing to know their story. And I think that's the beauty of the book. So we're taking back the power to the individual, which can be very destabilizing for certain groups of therapists, because there are certain professions that are built on power and greed, and we have to be honest. Because if your profession's built that way, they'll have their own language and they'll have a set number of sessions a client has to go through. And in some professions, that may even be 1 or 2 years or more. Now imagine if that was your car, you'd give up on the garage after maybe 1 or 2 attempts. But you certainly wouldn't leave your car in the garage or pop around once a week to see the mechanic for 2 or 3 years, because it simply wouldn't work. So that's what we're looking at. Yes, the app is amazing. My client uses it and the results are fantastic. I'll tell you a little bit about the app then while I'm waiting for somebody to fire a question. So the app, like I said, there's my phone, is Mind Reset. And I click on there, there's a Mind Reset. Within the app, we've got sleeplessness, sports, anxiety, trauma. The exam anxiety, that's interesting. I wouldn't know how to do that, Henry, but thank you for that. Next time, I'm sure I will learn, but I couldn't see where that button was. Exam anxiety, what I did with that one was I put everything that I know into that little program so that I can basically guarantee that if you suffer or your child suffers with exam nerves, they can use that one single program, and I will guarantee that they cannot do exam nerves by the end of that program. And there's 7 little sessions in there, 2 minutes each. If that, and by the end, it will annihilate that program for them. So any other questions? No, on the app, I'll continue then, because I also I'm wearing a Fitbit, also with some that can wear a ring. How does the app work to resolve trauma? Well, the technique Talby, no issue. The technique that's being used is split-second unlearning. What we're looking at is the eye tracking within the system scans, and it's looking for one of two eye positions. So, and we'll share this with the rest of the analog world. So if you imagine that there's something there that's a threat, our eyes can fixate, like, so long as I keep my eye on you, then I know that I'll survive. Or aversion, so long as I don't look at you, then I'll survive. And these can be momentary. So what happens is that when in that split second, as we just saw the chap, in that split second that you saw the overwhelm coming in, now I've got a cheat sheet which all of you guys can have because you're on here. I wrote a cheat sheet for you, and through it, it tells you everything you're going to be looking for in that split second. So that's the split second unlearning process. And if you think about it to resolve trauma, now I look at this more to resolve adversity, because one person's trauma mightn't equal the same as another person's, but emotional overwhelm it's much more fascinating and it's much more fragile. So that when that moment comes in, that first time learning experience, everything in that context is stored in that moment. So then the challenge is to get the client back into the state that they were in before this happened. And there's a wonderful thing where curiosity killed the cat. Well, if you think about it, before the event happened, neurologically, you're probably more likely to have dopamine and feeling quite good about yourself. And then an event, and in that event, the cortisol you hit. Yeah. So that single focus, though, think of it as first time learning. It's the first time event, except, and I'll make a proviso, except when it comes to period pains, because period pains isn't necessarily, as we found with our study, it isn't necessarily the first event. It's the thought of the next event coming. And if you're female, that's going to be in about 28 days. So you can see how that just treating, imagine that if you're troubled with this, just treating a period pain, dysmenorrhea for the larger title, treating it as if it was a trauma or an emotional overwhelm in the first instance, it can literally impact the physiology of the person, of the individual. And that's why our work connects really, really well with chronic pain, physical pain. And that's why most of my papers are co-authored with Professor Mark Johnson, who's a brilliant pain specialist. So what was that? Roland, can anybody attend the course? So long as they have a pulse and they need to, a sense of humor is usually a must. And the funny thing is, when it comes to a sense of humor, we're chatting, a lot of people can get into becoming a therapist for the wrong reasons. Now, if your client lights up when they think about their sessions with you, well done. That's going to help your client, it's going to help you, it's actually going to help your business. But there's an awful lot of people who, I'm off to see my therapist. And I'm guessing if you're on this call tonight, it ain't you. Yeah. So the body learned in one split second that it could not take care of itself. So by definition, this can be unlearned. Yes, Henry, that's exactly. It can be unlearned. However, it can't be unlearned consciously, if you see what I mean. Because in that moment, the emotional memory image is created. And the problem is when it's created, it then creates amnesia simultaneously. So when you're asking the client what their presenting issue is, your client will produce red herrings. And what I mean by that is they'll tell you what they consciously think is the trigger, but the conscious thought is usually a million light years from the actual source of the problem. And that's why In our sessions, we engage the client in playful curiosity, because for the neuroscientists on board right now, if we're getting them curious, we're building up the dopamine again. Because if we use talk therapy traditional and we get them bogged into something, they end up with too much of the stress chemicals in there, so they can't release it. So we keep it light and we keep it fun and we keep it curious so that they can move, and usually resolve the whole issue is usually resolved within one session. In terms of exams, stress, and children's learning capability, has the Mind Reset app tracking system been successfully used with children to reduce childhood stress and improve learning outcomes? Yes, it has. And Joanne, you know it has because you did the study. So well done. I think I'm making up this. Joanne, yes, it has been used successfully. And Joanne did the study, and well done, she did. Lisa and I, we went into the schools and we were with all of the kids. Joanne wasn't too well at the time, so we did the groundwork. And goodness me, she did the hard work. We thought it wasn't really hard being with all of the kids, but bless, she created that. Yes, it has been used successfully to help kids. Let's see. Question. How does your work differ from EM? Does that focus on eye movement also? Interesting. Good question. How does it differ? Well, I think to begin with, I'm only looking at the location of the eye. So if we look at where the eye looks, yeah, I'm not looking at what the mechanism is inside the brain. And I think this is where EMDR has had a lot of flack over the years. It's a gold standard. It gets good results. It's had a lot of flack because no one has been able to explain its mechanism of action. And I believe that split-second unlearning explains the mechanism of action. Probably that's a better way of answering. Because I'm not looking to the brain. I'm aligning with Plato. So here is our cave, and emotional memory images are stored on the wall of the cave, or as I would say, on the mind's eye. So while these emotional memory images are in the mind's eye, it prevents us from seeing our way forwards. And so by clearing it from the mind's eye, the system is free to move again. The individual is free then to unlearn at the same speed that they learned. Ethan, hello, Ethan. Haven't spoke Ethan in ages. Would you say playfulness is a skill? Well, if it is, I like to think I've mastered it. Playfulness, sadly, playfulness is what should be built into being a human being. But sadly, nowadays, it's probably going to be looked upon as a skill because it does seem to be dying off a little. Let's see. So we got. So there's a trigger reaction. How does the app... good question. Sandy, that's a good question. What are you doing to cancel the trauma? Well done. So let's imagine it's in the mind's eye again. And this feed between the outer you and the inner you, this feed, this informational feed is a constant. Yeah. Now, what the app does is it tracks to see that eye movement. Are you avoiding it or are you fixating? And the app spots that in real time. And then it says, right, keep your eye on this emoji. And this little emoji moves around the screen. And you have to follow the emoji with your eyes whilst trying to look at this. Now, if you're doing that, you can't do that. And within 5 seconds, the connection is broken. That's really how cool this is. So there's no conversation needed. There's no sharing. And there's a lot of data that suggests more people feel safer using their app than actually going to a therapist because you're not having to open up and you get a sort of a lightness, a feeling of something moved, but I'm just not sure what. And that's what we're aiming for, because if you feel confused, then the app has worked. Because while you're in this loop, there's no confusion. It's a loop that has run for years and years and years. And when we throw
confusion into this, it breaks. And in doing so, you're free again. In there, what is your vision on reparenting the trauma by giving the support that wasn't given them? As one of the biggest causes of the trauma was not the trauma per se, but the fact there wasn't support. Fascinating. Right now, that, I mean, that's probably going to take about a week to explain. But in my book, Family Rules, okay. Yeah, what I'm looking at for is those of you who have followed my work, you're listening here, and what we're chatting about is an auditory emotional memory image. The child has been present, and there's a paper we're working on at the moment around neglect. Now, the neglect may be momentary, but once it's in, there's an emotional memory image connected. So then we can chat about complex trauma, etc., etc. But let's just stay here. Let's just say neglect. Now that stays. Now, if the parent has come from neglect and then they've created this child and there's manipulation taking place, the challenge that we've got is we have to work with the manipulator. But the benefit, one of these is created because there's a threat to life. So when the child has this, their caregiver is their threat. So they end up in a double bind. So I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't. Or what Audie Lang called them, they're playing a game. They're playing a game of not playing a game. And if I tell them that I can see what they're doing, then I'll be punished. So therefore, I must play the game of not playing the game. So this auditory track sits, there's very little eye movement. But so people who have practiced my work have said, how do I spot an auditory? Now, it looks something like, and I'm not sure if she's on the call, but this practitioner who does this beautifully. But when you hit the sweet spot, you get one of those, and that is your indicator that there's an auditory tract running through there, Ewan, and that's the piece. So if we're doing it like this, then from the support position, there is no blame. Because one of the challenges is it's my dad's fault, it's my mum, it's anybody, but the blame piece comes in, and the blame piece just poisons everything. So by engaging them as an individual and seeing their mum and their dad as individuals and helping them to understand that this is the barrier between them and it isn't physically real. So by helping them and supporting them to understand this so that this is erased, we end up with a clear stream and families get to see each other. But while this remains in that auditory track, it will always, always jam. And then the problem leads on later in life because they'll go searching for that type of person, so they end up with you. Poor quality relationships, poor quality life, health, etc. Personally, to be honest, I have seen the app used quite a bit without any significant changes results. If it doesn't work, is there some typical? Yes, of course there is. If it doesn't work, the most typical thing is, you ready? Here it is. I'll demonstrate. Oh, I wonder. That's the difference. And we say it time and time and time, right at the beginning, bring curiosity. I defy for it not to work if you attend with curiosity. The biggest killer of my work, and suppose any therapeutic intervention, is when the client isn't bringing a bucket full of curiosity with them, when the therapist isn't creating that environment. And I would absolutely agree with you, Christian. The hardest thing in an app is how do we create the curiosity? But as we're heading more and more into AI land, I can see very soon we're going to have some sort of video there with just to help engage you better. Like an avatar, that's exactly it. Thanks. So like to really engage the user, because if we can get you engaged, and that's the challenge, once you're engaged, we can really open that curiosity up, and that makes a difference. Austin, playing devil's advocate, what a shock. If the app does it all, why study to be SSU therapist? Absolutely. Do not. Exactly. Do not. However, if you want to get better at doing what you do, if you want to the ability to help clients in a very short window, that's exactly what we're offering. How can I experience myself before deciding in October? I'm not sure what it is that you want to experience. Let me probably play with the app, have a look at it, ping us an email, and we'll probably chat to you. Thanks for your sense of priming them a bit. Yes, before shooting. That's exactly it, Christian. If we can just, we put little slides on there, and hope we want them to read it, but we love the slides, but we wrote them. The idea is to help prime them, but sadly, a lot of people read them very, very quickly or skim them. And we have some people have downloaded the app and have done all of the sessions, and the whole thing's finished in an hour. And you think, well, what chance were you going to give it? Or you're sitting on a bus, so you know what I mean? Let's get you in the right position and bring curiosity with you, and that it gives you the optimum position.
There's lots of reviews on people and Apple as well that people can look at and decide for themselves.
Yeah, App Store, Google Store, whatever. We've got lots and lots of reviews on it, so it does work. And I think the fun is making it fun. So how can I experience it myself before deciding? Let me see. I wonder. No, I was wondering if I could invite you in and we could just do something, but I'm not sure how to do that on a button. Could I? Don't need to have your emails and things, and no, I don't know how. But that would have been interesting, because I could have just brought you on here and done a session, couldn't I? Done a quick intervention with you. I could invite a guest. Yeah, copy that. But then I'd need to know Tal's email, and then Tal would have to put it on here. That would probably no. So, I've done the best I can. I don't know how to do that one. And then I seem to have lost everything. So how do I get back to everyone? Back to Matt. Share this link. I'm just going to nip back to screen share just to see if that'll actually move for me. No, cancel. Click that and seem to have lost everyone. Orientation, audio recording, guests. I haven't got any guests. How do I get back to the guys?
I'm here.
Sorry?
I'm here.
Yeah, everyone will be able to hear me, but I was attempting to see if I could, once you give me the link, I don't want a link. Slides, extra camera, video file, no. This is comments, there we go. Oh, goodness me. Meg, how do you prime your curiosity? Right, there we go. There's a good question. How do you prime your, are you ready for this? How do you prime your curiosity? That's got me thinking. Oh, how would I start getting curious? I hope that was a good enough demo for you, mate, because that's exactly how you prime your curiosity. So let's say I have a client and I'm sitting. Then, if we're chatting in your breath shifts, I say, oh, what was that? And you go, I don't know. And I say, well, your breath just shifted. And you say, yeah. And what went through your head? I don't know. I was just breathing. But you weren't just, everybody thinks they're just breathing, or that you're not. You're a human being experiencing stuff right in this moment. And we just get you to notice it. And by having you notice it, you start to prime your own curiosity. Now, what's this one? Do I need to get that exact black coaster to come? Yes, I used to have round ones. Yeah, but I moved to square ones because my wife used to tell me that she thought we turned a corner. So the problem with the round ones was, as you can imagine, they just went on and on. But with the square one, you can always turn another corner. Bunch, I like him. He does jokes. Meg, give me a smile. Masita's giving me a chuckle, but she's not giving me a question. Meg, for curiosity. I love it. So, guys, think next time out, I'm going to have to figure out how to put a video on so you guys can hear it. But I do like that. I'm going to go back to that one, because one of my other papers is that folly of society, and just to sort of not get too deep in the woods here, but I'd encourage you to consider that in 2020, Lisa and I watched, as our paternalistic system, as our government. And if you think about it as an ecosystem, the government technically, or the system, the higher up you go, that system is subconsciously our parent, and our parent systematically abused us, and that sends a tremor to the core of humanity, and that is still continuing today. My vision on reparenting is to help individuals understand the patterns, and these are the subconscious patterns that must be present in order for this to take place. These patterns have to just sing yes, here, here, here. It's a pattern we call the no my. No rules for me, my rules for you. And if that no my pattern is in your family, it will create your dot. And your dot means your rules for me, full stop. And what our governments did was they unleashed no my upon us. So we were seeing clearly on the TV that government ministers were doing X, Y, and Z, and it was terrible, but nothing was happening to them. But it was deliberate. It was deliberate so that we would subconsciously realize it's one rule for them, another for us. And that places the mind and the spirit of the masses into your dot, and it makes them more compliant. And then the problem with a more compliant nation, they can then start rolling out all sorts of things and do great harm. So my vision with the app, and that's where Lisa and I joined with the app, was to get the app, and that's why you don't even have to buy it, by the way. The stress program is free, and it allows individuals to get a connection with us. It allows us in some way, shape, or form to be doing the best we can to attempt to clear these. And in doing so, we're helping them to unlearn and relearn what it is to be human. Yesterday, did a number on us. Isabel, how does the split-second learning help release or resolve old, stored emotional or physical tension in the body? I'll use a constant, Isabel. Here we go. So you have one of these barriers. It creates a loop between your mind and your body. It's the bridge. It's funny, I was chatting about bridge the other day in an email, a bridge between mind and body. Anyway, so that bridge creates with it the HPA axis, hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis. And then we get inflammation. Now, whilst that's present, and if you want to read any of our papers, please feel free. What I'm suggesting is when that's present, the body is going to have lots and lots of inflammation. So simply by removing the trigger, there's no response needed by the body. And within a very short time, usually 24 to 48 hours, there's enough of the toxins released that the inflammation's gone. Now, AMDR, good. Pain as a function, yes. I'm added your emails to our mailing list. It's a non-verbal trauma cue, so it's a cheat sheet. So you can literally watch it. Eye gazing. Is it a freeze gaze, sudden, wide-eyed? Are they fixated? Is there rapid blinking? Are there any micro-expressions within the face? Has the breathing pattern shifted? Posture and movement, shrinking, shoulders rounded? Are they guarding? Hands and fingers? Are they having to do they suddenly touch or cross their body? Their voice, their speech, their pitch, is it changing? Is there a sudden rise or drop? Are they hesitating? Skin responses, goosebumps, without any sort of environmental causes. The door hasn't opened or the window opened. And what we're looking at is, are they grouped? And if they're grouped, then you know that split-second unlearning will work here. And that's what we're looking at. So I've put all of that into a handy little cheat sheet for you. And if you want it, ping the email info@matthudson.com and we'll email that out to you. So, any questions? 2 minutes to go. Yes, Mercita, surely with the mass increase in anxiety in school kids, there needs to be change. Of course there does. And who's going to bring it? It's fascinating, isn't it? Because when you look at the scale of it, we're looking at, Ronnie Lang said, the places that you can put a child, put a person against their will in the UK: prison, a lunatic asylum, and the classroom. And it's interesting that the three seem to run all by and large, via lots and lots of prescription drugs. Well, with that, the time at 8 o'clock, thank you, and I'll give you another invite in a month or so, by which time I'll be very slick at this. And I'm sure you'll love it. And people are already emailing me for the cheat sheet. Would you give me a chance to say goodbye? And you'll have the cheat sheet in your inbox in the next half hour or so. Thank you very much for coming along. Cheers. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And we'll catch you again soon.